and we're streaming. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shut my camera off so nobody's staring at my forehead while you guys are talking, okay?
Thanks, Brandy. I appreciate it.
I'm here if you need.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call this meeting of the Active Transportation and Sustainability Advisory Committee to order. Welcome, everyone. I would like to acknowledge that many of us are gathered on the territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, who are known as the Three Fires Confederacy. And this land is covered by the Williams Treaties of 1923. And I do want to recognize the horrible discovery of the remains of 215 Indigenous children by the Tecumloops to Secwepemc First Nation, BC. This is what colonial violence on this land looks like, and a lot of this is continuing today. And so I think we all have an obligation to work to redress those harms that have happened historically and that are still happening, and we can keep that in mind as we do our work around sustainability. All right, welcome everyone. Do we feel like we should do a round table of introductions? We do have some other staff people here. What does everyone think? You want to do that? Not seeing any nods. Maybe we'll just introduce ourselves as we speak. So we can skip that for now. I do want to recognize that Tyler Searles is leaving us, unfortunately. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this committee. We appreciate you so much, and we wish you luck moving out west. That's an exciting move, and we wish you all the best. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Keenan. I appreciate my time on the committee. We've accomplished some great things, and I'm sure you guys will continue to accomplish some great things into 2021 and beyond. Look forward to paying attention.
Yeah, you gotta log in and watch the live stream when you're at West. Come on, got nothing better to do. So, all right, thank you, Tyler. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the official plan feedback follow-up. We are going to be joined by someone from the Development Services Department, but they're not available until around 10:30. So with the committee's permission, we're going to skip that item for now and move on to item 2, which is exploring the development of an active transportation application for mobile devices. And this was put on the agenda at the request of Brett Greatrix. And so I will pass it on to him to see if he wants to introduce this discussion and what thoughts he has on this piece. Over to you, Brett. Thanks so much.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, just based on previous discussion of the committee of a potential desire to look at an active transportation app, I invited folks from our IT department just to speak to that, just to discuss if there's any challenges, opportunities, just their expertise, as there are resident experts on everything computer. So I know that Brent Harlow is on the line, so I'll turn it over to Brent to see what his thoughts are on potential options or alternatives.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brent Harlow. I'm the manager of our Geographic Information Services team here in IT. There are options, I guess. What we're kind of interested in is to see what the kind of requirements and what the end result would be. Once we kind of understand that, then we kind of go back and see what makes sense. Typically, in this type of situation, depending on what it is, again, we would probably leverage existing applications like Strava or Google or one of those existing ones, and then see if we could pull their data, because have users download data just to come to Barrie. People might not typically do that, so there's different ways in which it can look, because people are comfortable using existing apps, especially to come from somewhere else into Barrie to cycle around. So there's a few options we have that we could reach out to, so folks like Strava or any other companies that provide this tool, and you guys would know the best ones to reach out to for that situation. We have had Strava data in the past and done some analysis with it. It didn't go anywhere from the requirements, but if there's a desire to, we can always take that information and delve into it a bit deeper and do some actual analysis on the information. I know other municipalities have done that. Other than that, we would look at, trying to understand what it is that we would be looking at doing. Is it something that we kind of want to put on and cyclists or anyone who's moving around kind of hands as an actual app? We do create apps here at the city, but they're typically just more of an information, not necessarily always a data capturing perspective, live streaming. For example, we might just be kind of capturing, like we did one for the speed cushions, where people would put their recommendations for a speed cushion location. We don't typically track locations, not to say that we can't. We can definitely look into that as an option and a solution. So it kind of depends on what we want to see. But typically for things, if there's already a great company that most people are using anyways, we would try to reach out to them first, because that's what this community would be using, and then see if we could pull that data and then do our own analysis. If there's specific things we're looking for to do here at the city, then we can do our own analysis to understand, all right, let's understand the trends and patterns of what's going on in the situation at this city. So that's kind of this approach we would typically do. But if there is a desire for us to kind of create something, and I'm not sure exactly what the specs are, what we're trying to accomplish in this one, we can definitely look into something, kind of take that back, and then come back to the committee with some recommendations.
Thanks, Brent. That's fantastic. Just quickly before I open it up to the committee, you had mentioned that the city had used Strava data in the past. Do we have any regular data collection or data that we use around cycling or walking in the city right now? Do we have any data available on that? And maybe
not that I have received. We got a committee member in, I think it was 2015, provided some data, 2015, 2016. This is the rock cut, but we don't have any regular information coming related to specifically cycling or active transportation getting around that I have seen or I'm aware of.
Okay. And I saw Brett pop up. Yeah.
So just on our end, we're able to subscribe to Strava Metro as a municipality. So that provides us information based on the Strava users. So we are using that as a tool in our toolbox. It's not a be all and end all type solution, but it helps validate some of our decision-making process where we're doing active transportation. So we're using that today. And then we look at the Transportation Tomorrow survey, which we're a member of and we financially contribute to. And this is a travel survey completed by the MTO, which looks at all modes of transportation and trips throughout the GGHA. So that also has active transportation infrastructure. But those are our two primary sources.
Okay, thank you. Eric, see your hand? Go ahead.
Hi, Brett, I'm just curious, the Strava Metro that you're using, is that providing heat map type information of where people are actually riding a lot? Like you can see patterns of cycling and running? You're on mute.
There we go. It provides a heat map, and it also provides the most likely routing based on a origin destination that you select. And that's what you would also have if you were a paid user using the Strava application on your mobile device. That used to be a free tool as part of that, but they put that behind a paywall right now. I'm not sure what that costs for a user. I'm sure it's a nominal fee, but that's another great tool. It also gives proprietary trip information on different routes, but really we look at the data comparatively versus actual number of trips, because we know the modal share is already low, but we look to see where cycling is occurring the most. So we look at it more qualitatively than quantitatively.
Yes, I understand. And that makes sense to me. That's a great use, I think, to be able to look at what those patterns are. And then from the city's perspective, being able to use that in making decisions as to where we may improve cycling infrastructure to accommodate where most people are traveling mostly. So that's good that the data can be used that way. I agree with Brent, or his comment makes me think that, you know, having an app for active transportation that actually tracks for people is probably overkill. given that there are already these apps available at fairly nominal fee, like Strava is $5 or $6 a month. It's not that much, for example. Anyway, it's good to hear that you're able to use the Strava Metro, and I would suggest that continue to use that, because it's a continually growing database of what's happening, what people are actually doing currently. So it's useful.
Thanks for that, Eric. I see John's hand, and then I have Al after that.
Thanks, Keenan. Yeah, that's what I think this is great. For me, yeah, the Strava, there's a couple of great things that I like about the Strava. One, if we can kind of piggyback on their ability to kind of promote their own app rather than trying to build our own app and promote it. That's one great thing. I think there's already pretty good use of it. I mean, Eric will probably know within that cycling community, more for, I think, for not so much commuter cyclists necessarily, but within the recreational cyclist community, which I think is great. And the other part that I think that I really like about the data that the Strava data provides is that if you can determine how long the routes are, so you can determine how far people are going. So when we get the traffic counts from individual intersections, we know where they are right there, but we don't know how far that person has been going, what are the routes they've taken to get there. So like kind of opening up that information to saying this was actually only a 5 kilometer trip, or how many of our bike trips are less than 5 kilometers, where are they coming from, where are they going to? It's just that information just, to me, is so valuable in determining what missing links we have, or what might be the barriers to entry for some of those other users. So I'm a big proponent of the Strava app, but certainly open. I don't know, I certainly haven't done research on whether or not Google's got another system that works equally as well, but those are the items that I think are very valuable. And then I guess the other component was, because we have those spot data collection points at the intersections, obviously the shortfall of the Strava is that it's not so, I don't think there's a lot of people using it to track their commuter trips. And we'd have to kind of encourage that to get that, but I think there would be a way to try to link those spot data that we have at the individual intersections and bring that other information from Strava. So to combine those 2 points of data. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity with that Strava app.
Thanks, John. Al?
So a couple questions, Brett, about the Strava data, and I know Rob Meyer was a great fan of trying to make that back in his previous involvement with both this committee and the Active Transportation Working Group. A couple questions. Active transportation includes more than just cycling. So I was curious as to, and I think somebody suggested, maybe it was Brent, about Strava can collect data on pedestrians as well. But I'd be interested in knowing how much, if any, data we actually get. I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around somebody going out and saying, oh, well, I'm going to walk down to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. And how many people actually put that data into Strava? Because you have to do that, right? Like you have to say, this is where I'm going. You have to tell them that you're doing a trip. Otherwise, they're not aware that it's happening. Is that correct?
So my understanding is you'd likely have to initiate, do a start of trip. So you'd have to physically press a button on the application to record a trip. We're actually using that data. We've forwarded that on to our operations department that's looking at the winter maintenance request for the access ways, or the catwalks, we call them, off-road. Again, a tool in the toolbox, because of that limitation, that it doesn't reflect all users, but it's something that's a relatively good tool, still acknowledging that fact. It's probably one of the best tools we have. So that, with just anecdote of information and just reaching out to and observing local pedestrian patterns, is quite helpful. So short answer, it doesn't cover all trips, but it's a good representative sample of popular trips.
Does Strava, like, are they able to give us, or do we have a way of figuring out what the level of representation is with the data. And I'm not trying to be critical of the data because, you know, potentially I think John would argue that some, you know, some data is better than no damn data at all. But I'm just more curious as to how much it's actually collecting, and potentially are there ways that this committee or the city in general can promote that. And when I had that thought, I would also had ringing in the back of my head of, oh dear, Big Brother is watching you and wants to know what you're up to, kind of thing. And I think that became a bit of an issue for some people when they were going to do the, I can't even think what they called it, but the whole smart wired city thing they were going to do down on the waterfront in Toronto on the Portlands that got, that they pulled the plug on. So I'd love to hear any comments from anyone on the committee on that.
Thank you, Al. Okay, I see a couple hands. We're going to go to Brent Harlow and then to Kelly and then to John.
Just on the kind of aspect talking about the smart communities, we have done some investigation into smart communities. Essentially, your cell phone is, as long as you have something like Wi-Fi on, for example, it tracks you everywhere you go. So every time you walk past any kind of connection point, your Wi-Fi is always connecting to access points that are out there in the community. So that's how places like Google essentially know how long people spend in certain stores, for example. Because if you download pretty much any app on your phone, whether it's Google or anybody else, they're tracking that type of data. It's all anonymous, but they're kind of understanding where people are going. So we've done some preliminary investigations to see about that. We're still a long ways to go from that. But if you're walking down the waterfront, maybe there are some ways we can kind of see at least how long people are walking down the waterfront, kind of where they're staying. But that's what those companies are using that information for. And they're trying to track patterns and trends. We haven't done that yet, and we're not at that stage yet, but that's what it is used for. And that's how people are tracking that type of data. For example, in those smart communities, it is anonymous. So, it doesn't track the actual users of what's happening, but it does have the ability to understand where people are going, how long they're typically spending a location, how far maybe I went from from South Shore, made it my way to Heritage Park. How long did that take me? Where did I slow down along the way? So that's kind of what that does. And it just uses your cell phone as it walks past every type. There's a Wi-Fi spot or a cell tower. It can track that type as well. So there's a bunch of companies that do that. So that's how they would track that. And then for the Strava data, it just depends on the detail that we're allowed to see. I know so Rob was the one who provided the data the last time. It was okay, but it wasn't easily to kind of pull. So we would have to do some more investigation. So it depends on the details in which of the data we have and how it's set up. So there's some ways that people set the data up in the back end that us IT geeks mess around with and have some fun with. And then we're able to kind of present it. So we would have to take a look at the data and just kind of see how it's set up, and then maybe work with the right company or folks, whether it's Strava or whoever else company might be out there to potentially analyze this data if that's something that we need. And we'd work with Brett and his team as well if needed to kind of do that.
Thank you.
Question,
Kelly?
Yeah, that was great information, Brent. Baseline data is always great when you're developing these kinds of strategies. What comes to my mind, is I always go back to education and engagement, and as an opportunity to engage and educate. We need more cyclists out there, walkers, going to our community events like the farmers market, really putting a plan together to start collecting some baseline data about how to get to the market, get some students out there recording this information and gathering it so we can educate as we gather data. We really want to make sure that education and awareness is a huge piece of this, and getting them involved at that level with this, the technical data that's gold, right? That's the data that you want. You can get into, with your engagement and education at these events to let people know, what we're doing and what's going on with active transportation in the city of Barrie. I think it's a really important piece, aligned with our baseline data on collection through Wi-Fi or whatever those pieces might be.
Really important point, Kelly. Thank you. John?
Great, thanks. And yeah, I was kind of going back to some of Al's point on the number of users. I know I don't have the number of users off the top of my head here, but there is, individual users. So we know it was a good number of users. And I think the point is that we haven't made an effort to tell people in the community that, hey, this is what we're going to start using for tracking things. If you want the City of Barrie to be interested in your terrible walk to school, let us know that you're walking there 5 times a day, sort of thing. So, and I don't know, is the city allowed to promote a private app like this to say if we're using it? I'm not sure if that's a problem or not, or who we need to ask to confirm if that's a problem. But sorry, I just continue on the last couple points I had there. So the other part was that, that the free. So I use the free app, and I just, since Rob kind of started up, I've been doing it for a while, where I try to track everything that I do, just because I find that stuff interesting to see how far we've walked, and what the trips are, how many different things. So, and I think there's a lot of demand for people to do that kind of stuff. I think people are genuinely interested in that sort of thing, and I've never noticed it being a big data drain. I don't know. I guess Eric probably runs his a lot more frequently than I do. It runs the battery a little bit, I would say, but I don't notice a huge data push on it. So yeah, so sorry, I just wanted to comment on those were my items.
Thanks, John. Eric?
Yeah, thank you. So just to comment on a couple of things, what Kelly said and what John was speaking about. I agree with Kelly. The education and promotion, in addition to the data, it's key. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, in my opinion. I think it's very important. And to John's point, I believe we could piggyback on Strava. Again, they're doing all the collection. We don't need to get into that business. Let them do it. If we could somehow, again, John raised the question legally, if we can tie in and use that, I don't know. But I do know that on Strava, you could set up a club or a community and invite people through the active transportation website, for example, to say, we're here, join our club if you're on Strava. And the people who are using Strava typically now, to answer Al's question, people who are fitness and geeks like me, are doing both. And I don't think it's just geeks like me. I think, to John's point, people are interested in they're more aware of their fitness and how many steps they're taking, that, like all the Fitbits and all that stuff, Apple Watches, like people are doing that stuff. So yes, people are using Strava for everything they do, if they're a Strava enthusiast. So that data is being collected. I don't know the numbers. I'm sure when we pull the data, when the city gets the database that we buy that data, we can find out. I don't know what percentage of population it is or whatever, but the point is, it's some data, which is better than no data. And there are people marking, and in Strava, you can mark that you're doing a commute. I do that all the time. I'm on my bike or I'm on my feet commuting. And that's a commute versus a recreational ride. It's different. It's categorized differently. So that is useful data. And I think tying that together with Kelly's point, with promoting it, getting people to use it, encouraging them to walk to the farmer's market or whatever, that kind of closes the loop, and it helps the city then plan the infrastructure, where to improve, where to put signage up, all that sort of thing. I think it's useful data. I don't know what it costs the city, but I'd encourage them to make use of that. Strava is one that I'm very familiar with, but there's probably others as well. Google data, Google's tracking everything, whatever. There's value in that data set, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Eric. So I guess in terms of next steps for the committee and what we can look at, like I have a few questions. And I'm not sure if Brett knows this, or Brent, or someone else on the committee. Is it like an ongoing subscription that the city would get to access that data, or is it like a one-time buy of the data? Like, do we know how that works with Strava?
So I'd have to reach out just to see exactly what they have to offer. I think the key thing to keep in mind is we have a few specific programs that are already using Strava Metro, which is a web-based platform for municipalities or consultants looking at cycling infrastructure. So a good example would be the Cycleberry Infrastructure Program, which is really a citywide look at where we can easily implement cycling lanes by repurposing existing roads that are underutilized. So looking at signed routes, road diets, urban shoulders, things that aren't going to cost very large capital dollars. Going from there, though, once we start looking at larger cycling projects that do involve large capital dollars, a lot of the times we have to align with renewal needs in the corridor. So whether that's road reconstruction, new sewers, new water mains, it's very challenging for us to go ahead of that. Not being said, we can't. So we're still looking at some key major corridors as part of the Cycleberry Infrastructure Program, such as Essa, Young Burton, and Bayfield Street. But once you start looking at doing a retrofit, it inevitably starts to turn into a bit of scope creep, but not for a bad reason, just because when you're out there, you want to do what you need to do once. So I think we've got a fairly good handle on it. Now, if it's more for helping users navigate the city's street network or AT infrastructure that we have in place, that might be a bit different discussion as well. And maybe steering them to the app if that falls within city policies, which I'd have to verify. I'm not quite sure if we can do that, but that might be the better option. So that's my thoughts on kind of the Strava data and how we could use it and make it useful to us. Because at the end of the day, our transportation master plan also basically has a complete cycling network on almost every single collector and arterial roadway. So everything's identified. It's just a matter of phasing some larger projects. And then really with our big push on our quick wins through the Cycleberry Infrastructure Program, we should be in a fairly good place. But I could see maybe this app being helpful for folks to navigate the local streets, say within Northeast Barrie, where we're not going to sign every single street, but really for folks to understand to take advantage of these low stress, low volume roadways and undertake orienteering on their own, just how to navigate from A to B, and avoiding some of the busier roads and taking advantage of some of these quieter streets and using the grid system.
Thanks for that. You raised a really important point about, how are we actually going to use the data if we do collect it, and whether, it is useful for us. I don't know if any committee member, John, I see your hand. Did you have some thoughts on that, on what Brett just said?
Sorry, yeah, the part that I think could be valuable for having the data, in general, just having data is I think a good thing, but I think we're likely, based on other cities, in for probably some pushback when we're trying to implement some of this stuff. And if we have data saying here's what we've got so far, I think some people don't even know what level of, or can't appreciate what level we're at. And I think if you have the data, it's easier to say, we're shifting this, we're making this a bike lane because we've got 50 bike trips along this road in the peak hour, and we're trying to get rid of 5 cars parked on the road in the peak hour. Those 5 people are having a tough time with it, but it's just easier to make those arguments if we've got the data with us. So that's my hope for the data, is if we can get good information. I feel like we've got a long road ahead of us for implementing our full network of cycling trails, and if we can have this in our pocket going forward, then it would help us.
Wilf, and then Al.
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Keenan. So just a quick question, whether are we looking at collecting data from any of the other tools that people might regularly use, like Google Fit or Samsung Health, so that we can overlay that, or are we just kind of limiting the snapshot of what's going on by looking at just this one piece of software?
It's a good question. I'm not super familiar with what's possible in terms of accessing the data from places like Google Fit or Samsung Health. I don't know if Brett or Brent have any info on that.
I'll jump in first, and Brent, follow up if you have anything to add. Yeah, so we're just using Strava, not that it's the be all and end all, but they do have it's a free web-based, easy to use web platform. That the first part being the key part, that it's low cost. The second element is we have looked at other data providers that aggregate mobile device location. But it is quite costly, and we're just not quite sure the value for money there is there yet. I can't give a specific cost because it was a proprietary quote, but it's a 5-figure value, so it's not insignificant. And we did struggle with some just value out of some of the data we're pulling for other uses from a lower pay-as-you-go type service. So we just want to make sure that if we go down a road that we're getting the value for money from these services that we can't leverage from something that's lower cost or no cost. So that's where we're at with that. But we're always trying to keep track of recent trends. And we have a good relationship with some of the leading transportation consultants that focus on active transportation that are keeping up to date with the latest and greatest. And right now, nothing really standing out as where we're significantly behind other municipalities. Everyone's kind of experimenting with different things, but there's nothing, no new golden standard just quite yet.
Okay, so we do have our guest from the Development Services Department to talk about the official plan here, and it is after 10:30. So if it's okay with the committee, we'll put this conversation on hold for now. I'll remember that Wilf had the floor. We can come back to it. So let's welcome Thomas from the Development Services Department. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Morning. We just were wanting to have a conversation with you about this committee's submission to the official plan and draft 2. And so maybe if you wanted to give us a quick little introduction of draft 2 and the process going forward, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so first, I just want to thank the committee for doing such a deep dive on the official plan. I know that, you know, as a committee made up of volunteers, that you all have lives and everybody's very busy. So we appreciate your comments. And in terms of the process, or what the city did is we received over 700 pages of submissions from the public, different stakeholders, staff, councillors, and what we did is we coded all of those comments as much as we could, and we gave that direction to our consultants, being Dillon Consulting, and they are the sort of the authors of the official of draft 2. So what they did with the committee's comments is the committee provided comments within embedded comments within the official plan itself. So what the consultants had done is they had reviewed those comments and tried to grab as many of those as much of the broader comments as possible. Some of the committee's comments, you know, they were almost a little bit too detailed for the official plan to address specifically, because we need more input from an updated transportation master plan. You know, the city is growing by 150,000 people by the year 2051. So we are doubling our population. The previous transportation master plan was not based on that level of growth. And so some of the assumptions in the current transportation master plan will need to be revisited. So it's some of the suggestions we have to think about a little bit more once we get an updated transportation master plan. But where we could, we put in enabling or umbrella language that would allow for the initiative to happen. You know, for example, adding more active transportation infrastructure to connect people to employment areas. That was one of the committee's comments. And in some cases, we identified some roads, specifically arterial roads, as freight supportive corridors to make sure that freight can get into and out of the city. And putting active transportation on those roads would be a little challenging, just because, you know, you don't want to have bikes and trucks on the same road. And if Brett is still on, you know, he would probably suggest that there may need to be a grade separated sort of corridor for that type of transportation. But we don't have all the details worked out. So we're working closely with Brett, with Justin, to implement sort of a vision or a hierarchy of roads, and really sort of cement a complete streets approach to road design. And that sort of umbrella language, that umbrella idea or umbrella policy will make its way into the urban design guidelines. And the urban design guidelines, which haven't been released yet, there's going to be a draft 2 coming out shortly over in the summertime. And that will propose sort of what we want to see in the different types of streets. So for example, an arterial road, we have an arterial road, Yonge Street, that goes through different sections of the city. And we don't want to treat the entire length of that arterial road the same. In some section goes through Allendale, which is, well, it's Burton Avenue really, but it's part of Yonge Street. So we're going to need to treat that section a little differently than the section that goes between Minette's Point and Big Bay Point. That's sort of a more suburban feel to it. So we're going to be looking at these different segments of our different roads to identify what type of infrastructure, we think we'd like to have. And then that will be sort of set out in the urban design guidelines and implemented through the next transportation master plan update. So we're setting the framework up for ourselves to have really visionary transportation master plan that's going to consider all of the additional growth that Barrie's going to see, that's going to reflect the city's community structure, which focuses growth towards those strategic growth areas, towards our major transit station areas, as well as how to connect people to our employment areas. So that's sort of a very high level update in terms of the process, how we're working through it, and we're working with the standards team on because they have lots of questions for us about how wide are roads going to go, what are those right of ways going to accommodate, and all these concerns as a lot of staff have expressed about the vision in our new official plan. So we don't have all the details worked out yet, but what we're trying to do is make sure that this official plan has the enabling policy language for us to be able to do the detailed work through master plans and whatnot.
Thank you so much. And I do want to mention that there is a public meeting for the official plan tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. You can find the details at buildingberry.ca to participate in that if you'd like to. Are there any questions or comments from committee members on that right now? Kelly?
Yeah, so new girl here on this committee, and I thought I heard that Brett say our active transportation lanes are all locked in and we know what we're doing in the next 5 to 10 years based on the current active transportation master plan. So what I'm hearing Thomas say is that it's not quite there, or I'm sorry, just clarity on that, because yeah. I thought we knew what we were doing, and then now we don't quite know. So I understand the official plan is an overview and an umbrella, and the pieces fit underneath, right? So at least that's my guess. And again, I'm not a planner, so I just maybe some clarity on that, because I'm not hearing that.
Good question, Kelly. Sorry, just quickly, Al, would you mind muting your microphone just when you're not talking? I can just hear the background noise. Sorry about that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a great question, Kelly. And I don't mean to introduce confusion, and I apologize for that. And I don't want to suggest that we are stepping away from commitments, that there's projects that we have already committed to and there's funds applied to. And Brett, interject, I saw you light up there. What I suspect is going to happen, that we're going to be seeing an increase in our active transportation infrastructure. So I don't think we're going to be walking away from things. I think what we may be doing is changing sort of the location of them, but in terms of the quantity of our active transportation infrastructure, I don't think you're going to see a decrease. We are getting direction directly from the province, from the ministry that reviews our official plan, that we are to plan for active transportation and we are to plan for public transit. Those are the priorities of planning. And the direction is very explicit. So our official plan provides a number of different sort of frameworks to make sure that this is achieved. We propose a street design. We have a complete street network design that all elements include an active transportation component. And yeah, I don't want to suggest that we're walking away from anything. I think what you'll see in the next transportation master plan is a greater emphasis on active transportation and you know, more current best practices. Brett, if I could probably say it that way, you know, there's things that the current transportation master plan suggests that are different now. We just have better ideas, better understanding of how to incorporate active transportation.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll just jump in quickly. So I think that yeah, there's a little bit of confusion. Really, when looking back at our OP and our previous transportation master plan, that was generally based on a on-road, either bicycle lanes or buffered bicycle lanes. With the OTM Book 18 update that came out in the mid 2010s, that has pushed us to a more off-road, not meaning in parks or valleys, but just behind the curb cycling infrastructure on our larger roadways. So the current transportation master plan is following the current Book 18. So that is established, and that's setting positive guidance on the best infrastructure types on these corridors identified in the city. And just taking it a step further, the transportation master plan really only covers phases 1 and 2 of the EA process. So any project that's significant in nature would go through a Schedule C project. So that's phases 3 and 4. So we go into a deeper dive on the corridor and look at AT infrastructure reflective of best practices, but also in situ constraints to come up with a solution that balances impacts throughout the corridor. I think some of the change that Thomas is alluding to as well is more to do with the complete streets and the street makeup. So I think really this is the direction we were heading anyways, but this just really gives us a strong supporting policy. When we're developing corridors, for example, Yonge Street, Burton, when we're looking at streetscapes, cross sections, this just gives us the backing, additional backing to make sure that we're being supported in developing complete streets, streetscapes. So just translating that, we'll see higher order streetscape, landscaping, furniture in higher density areas. But we want to be pragmatic and realistic. If there's more of a suburban, urban context, it doesn't make sense to have a downtown level of service, even from a fiscal standpoint, in a more suburban type cross section. So those are some of the policies that we're developing as part of this OP. That'll just give better guidance, and more importantly, better guidance for redevelopment on these corridors for our developers in town.
Kelly, you still have the floor if you want to follow up.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot to take in. All right, so right now we have a consultant working on phase 1 of our approved active transportation plan. Is that right, Brett? Like that phase 1 is rolling out?
Sorry, so what the consultant is doing right now is looking at the recommendations in the current TMP, and we're just taking it to the next level as far as validating the recommendations and moving to design to do the implementation. But these are focused primarily on our local streets and collector roadways. This isn't looking at cycling infrastructure on our arterial roadways generally, because those involve large capital projects. So this is this assembly of quick win projects on a citywide basis, focused on our low stress, low volume streets as a backbone of the network that we're going to build out quite rapidly and still implement cycling infrastructure is part of our major capital projects that have been ongoing and continue to be ongoing at the city here.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Tyler?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas, for the update. I haven't had a chance to review the draft document within the context of my ATSC seat yet. But I guess just a large overarching comment is, does the city of Barrie have a hardline date for when they would consider comments from the committee on this document?
So the official date for the public is actually the day of the public meeting, which is June 2nd. However, as the committee is an internal stakeholder, there is a little bit of flexibility to that. And I would even suggest that, if the committee has a subcommittee that looks at the official plan, that we can meet, I could meet with that committee and help you through the review so you can put together your comments a little faster rather than last time, because I know it took a little while for the committee. So I can I can definitely assist with that if that would help.
Tyler, did you have anything else to ask or add on that?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Thomas. I guess just a second comment based on Kelly's questions and Brett's commentary as well. So am I understanding correctly that the OP is just at large going to implement the recommendations of the TMP or the Transportation Master Plan, pardon me? Or is there room for slight adjustments to, like active transportation mapping and street makeup through the OP process specifically, or is that all to be addressed through a later update to the TMP document?
Yeah,
And
it's
really
more so.
Yeah, go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, yes. So the current draft official plan, the schedule that you see in schedules 4A or map 4A is based on the current TMP. So the locations, the future locations, it's all based on the current TMP. When the TMP is updated, we will update the official plan through an official plan amendment. And that will change. So if there is changes and recommendations to locations or direction or anything like that, the official plan will be updated so that we can reflect that. And that goes for right-of-way widths and a whole bunch of other transportation-related items. We would update the official plan. So that would probably happen. I think the TMP update is just getting underway, and it would reflect the direction of with the official plan. So the two document would be in alignment. And that's probably 2 years away, Brett. I'm not sure how quickly the TMP update would get done.
Yeah, we're looking at initiating that in 22, and it'll be about a 3-year process.
Okay, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's good to know. Like I said, I don't have any specific comments because I haven't had a chance to review the draft yet. But maybe we can have a subsequent discussion about that subcommittee breaking out again for a second review.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was. Brett, I see your hand.
Right. And if I could just add to that, they're quite synergistic documents, and to keep in mind that the technical document is really the TMP. So I wouldn't be overly concerned on specifics within the OP. It's really to use kind of general language, active transportation supportive, the specific facility recommendations, things of that nature are really housed in the TMP. So just for clarity on that. And the OP is the overarching document that we try and follow, but there is a little bit of a feedback on just kind of best practices, how that evolves. So it's a continual process that we do here at the city with both documents.
Thanks for that input. So is there a desire, I'll go to you in a second, Al, is there a desire from the committee to have a subcommittee meeting to look at the second draft of the OP? Do people have the capacity to do that at this time? I don't know if Al, if you wanted to speak to that too, because I know you were involved in the first submission.
There we go. Yeah, well, I'd be willing to have another go at it. Our numbers are dwindling because Tyler's running out of town. Sherry's still dealing with COVID, so it's down to John and I. But we're always eager to have other participants. So I'm willing to, to put some more effort in that. And I have some other issues that I won't bore the committee with this morning about, in the interest of time, for Thomas. But one I did want to raise, though, would be there are areas where I think, and I know this was included in my own comments, but I think it may have been within the comments that the subcommittee sent in as well. There are areas where the natural heritage mapping that is underlying is I think deficient in terms of the importance it gives to those areas, particularly in the older part of the city. And the one that I will just specifically note, there's a ravine area east of Ann Street coming down the hill towards the 400, coming off of, it's in behind Vine Crescent and south of, I think it's Shirley Street. And it was mapped as highest class natural heritage. And yet there is a designation on this ravine of residential rather than environmental protection, which makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And I don't believe it's privately owned land. But that's just one example. And there was a plan by the city 3 or 4 years ago to do a major stormwater management facility going down there to the cost of $800,000 to $900,000, which would have laid waste to that ravine, and ultimately it was stopped because of public outcry. And the solution in the meantime was to do some more work on the master stormwater planning so that all of it wasn't being diverted down through that ravine. And also to the solution was about $50,000 worth of sticking, old Christmas trees in the ground to help stabilize the bank. So I don't understand why that, as one example, is a change that should be, I think, should definitely have been made. And the other question was one which I know was discussed at the Sustainability Subcommittee, was about the boundaries of the northern boundary of the East End historic neighborhoods. And I did not see in the second draft any change in the mapping responding to either of those situations. So I don't know if Thomas has any comments that he wants to offer, but I'm quite prepared to have a discussion with him later today or tomorrow, or as soon as we can do it, to deal with those couple of specific issues. So thank you.
Thanks for raising that, Al. Tom, did you have any thoughts right now? Or?
Yeah, I can address one of those, at least the first one, Al, that you mentioned. Thank you, Councillor, about the EP1 mapping. So we do our best to make sure we catch all the corrections. Despite that, we've received comments from the public, from property owners, that there's errors in mapping, and that's going to happen. And that's the purpose of the consultation, is to make sure we get it right. And I appreciate your comments. And I made a note for us to check with our GIS technician to see if we can do a sort of a citywide review to see where we have EP1 designation or overlay, and see what the land use designation is on top of that. Because EP1 lands, as you suggest, should be lands that are not developable. So we should try to make sure that the land use designation is natural heritage system and green space. So we'll do that check. So thank you for that comment, Al. Your questions about the north end of, the north side of the East End. I did get some information from a former member of the historic neighborhood group that, establish the boundaries for the historic neighborhood. So you and I can connect specifically on that, and I can give you a little bit more information as to the logic behind the boundaries.
Great. Just quick question, better to do it before or after the public meeting tomorrow night?
As I said, so the public meeting comments are due from the public at large by June 2nd. So that's tomorrow. But as this committee is a committee of council, there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of getting comments from this committee and other committees.
So if they're the committee's comments, we've got more time. And if they're my own, then I got to talk to you in the next 24 hours.
Yes, sir.
Call me and give me a time, sir.
All right, thanks.
Well,
Thanks, Al. Thanks, Tom. Oh, Tyler, you did have your hand up, but you put it down. Are you good? Okay. And John?
Thanks, Ken, and yeah, thanks, Thomas, for the presentation. So yeah, I think I was one of the people that was sitting on the subcommittee that were providing comments, and I think that the official plan is really important for like a tool for us to move stuff forward for us. So if there is an opportunity and anyone else is interested, I think that would be great to be able to sit down with Thomas and kind of go over where we're at with that. So is that this week? It has to be this week, or is that next week? Or is anyone else interested in doing that, I guess, is the question. Great. Wow. Good. So maybe I guess the question is, does that have to be this week? Can it be next week? Is it better for anyone next week?
Tom, how is it looking for you in terms of your schedule?
It's a great question. We couldn't meet this week. And like I said, it doesn't have to be right at the public meeting or at the date of the public meeting, as this is a committee of council. We would expect to get comments from internal stakeholders. I am available. I can be available Wednesday afternoon. I'm available Friday as well. So maybe whatever times work for the committee, I'll try to move things around to make it happen.
All right, I see Tyler and Kelly had raised their hand to express interest. I don't know if either of you, and Anne Marie as well.
Yeah, just if I could, just based on our previous review experience, it might be best rather than try to cover the whole document in one sitting, which is a challenge. It might be best for interested members of the committee to review that document in their own time and come armed with a list of interest items or notes that we can discuss with Thomas, just to expedite the review process with him.
Good suggestion. And maybe we can look at a meeting next week then, with giving the committee members some time to take a look at things that apply to our mandate, and we can maybe set up a meeting next week. Kelly?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could get a copy of the submission from the Active Transportation Committee that was given.
Yeah. Tom, do you have that? Because
I have it.
Oh, John has it.
I have it.
Okay. We may have misplaced it a little bit.
I sent it to Tyler, but I realized I got to bounce back later on. So I said it's a huge email. So I should have sent it a different way. I thought it went through. I thought everything's fine. And then I didn't realize that no one actually got that email. So I do have that. I can send that out to the group. It'll be a link rather than trying to send a giant email. So.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That's the problem with those giant files. It's not easy to manage. Okay, so maybe John, are you okay with taking the lead on setting up a meeting for next week with Tom, and you can connect with the interested members and set that up? As I'm kind of telling you, so, but you don't have to if you can't take that on.
Yeah, I can set up that. Yeah, sure. So it's next time towards the end of next week, probably. Everyone.
Just to give people enough time to fully read through the second draft.
So I'll send that email out with the information in it, and then maybe a list of potential dates, and then.
Tom, I see your hand.
Oh, thank you, Councillor. I was just going to say that there's been quite a bit of movement of content throughout between draft 1 and draft 2. So if you're looking at draft 1, you see you had a comment on this policy and you don't see it addressed, it may have been because it's been moved. So I always say, you got to strike a balance between looking at your previous comments and seeing, where the changes were made, and looking at the new draft, because it may have been addressed elsewhere or through a policy in the implementation section of the official plan. So I always caution, don't spend too much time looking at your previous comments. Make sure to spend some time looking at the new official plan. Section 4, Chapter 4 of the official plan is particularly important to this committee. Map 4A is also particularly important. And we've split the transportation maps into two, 4A and 4B. 4A being focused on AT and 4B focused on automotive. I'm using that term loosely, but it's more focused on road widening and things like that. So just to expedite the review, make it a little easier, because it is a big document for sure.
That's great. Thank you. Al?
Thomas, is it possible to get, or do you believe it would be helpful if we had access to a track changes version of the document? Because it always drives, trying to review something, it always drives me crazy going back and trying to hunt for what might have happened when I'm not working with the current document. Any thoughts?
Al, I would not recommend it. I don't think it would be very helpful. It's difficult for me to navigate the document and track changes. So we purposely did not release track changes version. There would be a track changes version between draft 2 and 3. And there's also a comment matrix that tracks all the comments that have been submitted and how those comments led to changes or why it did not result in a change. But this version has been changed so many times that even as an author myself, I find it difficult to use. So that's why I always suggest to just spend the time reviewing draft 2, treating it almost as though it's a new document a little bit, and trying to get your comments. And I know it's time consuming, but it's important.
I'm afraid Tyler's going to be booking his flight west earlier to avoid
Get out when you can.
Getting out of town in a hurry.
That's funny. Kelly, I saw your hand there.
Yeah, sorry, just quickly, Thomas. Oh boy, those were the words of gold you just said to me. I have been wondering how in the heck we are all going to know. And we put so much work into the feedback process, and it feels like it's going into a vacuum. So for you to say that, which would be great to tell the public that too, I think, for versions 3 and 4, you're actually going to address those comments and specifically say how they were either addressed or not addressed and why. So that, thank you so much for that. That gives me a lot of relief, but I really think we should let people know that ahead of time, because the time and energy that gets put into this document, and it's, it's a beautiful document, it's large, and I know you guys spend an incredible amount of time on it, and it's very important. So I think, we don't want to ask for feedback and get it appear to fall into a black hole. So I really appreciate that. And perhaps we put that up front somewhere, because we continue to give feedback and we don't see where it's going. So, when you're saying in version 3 and 4, it's actually going to be tracked, and our comments are going to be said, okay, this is why it wasn't adopted, etc. I think that's really great. So thanks.
Good feedback. Thank you. Al, I do want to move on to the next item soon.
I'd like to ask Thomas if he could give us a suggestion. If we're going to meet within the next week and a half or 2 weeks with this, if you're going to meet with our subcommittee, is it possible for you to come to that meeting and tell us how you've responded to our comments? The reason I ask the question is otherwise we're hunting around, in the woods trying to find out, well, did they, what have they done? If it's been implemented, can you tell us where it's been implemented?
Well,
if it hasn't been, can you tell us that? I'm trying to find a way of making the best use of your time and our time to do this.
Yeah, Al, I totally understand where you're coming from. I think we've heard from Tom, though, that I think the thing that happened with the first draft of the official plan, it seemed to be kind of throw everything in there that we want to see, and it was a lot. And so it's been pared down quite a bit. I think Tom's advice of looking at the second draft almost as a new document and then coming to that meeting with comments on that document specifically is probably the best bet for us to have a productive conversation. We can, of course, look back on our submission and try to find where things weren't incorporated. But I think that's going to be a time-consuming process for all of us, and it might be a better use of our time and more productive to just look at that second draft. I think that's what I'm hearing as the path forward. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah, I appreciate that subcommittee doing that work, and Thomas, you as well. I do want to move on from this discussion though, John.
Sorry, just last thing. So is it Kelly, Anne Marie, Al, and Tyler? Or are you?
Yeah. Actually, how about you send the invite to the whole committee, just in case people are interested. I don't think everyone will show up, but just for information purposes, so that we're aware of what's going on, that would be appreciated. Okay, thank you, and thanks, Tom, for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
Okay, all right. With that, we will move back to what were we talking about before? The app, the data. Okay, so Wilf had the floor and had asked about looking at collecting data from other tools, and we had been told that that data is expensive. We're not sure how it would be used at this point. So in terms of a path forward, do we want to, as a committee, talk about how we can promote Strava use so that we get better data? How do we approach this? Wilf, you can take it away to Oregon.
Yeah, thanks, Keenan. There's just one more thing that I was going to add, which was kind of the being sensitive to the possible bias towards what kind of users are using Strava. So are we biasing the data and saying we're putting ourselves in a position where we're thinking we've got good data, but really we've got data that just represents a subset of very active users that know this tool, that use it. And then we've got another large section of the population that are using a different tool and very different routes that would give us more wholesome data. So does it make sense to maybe just investigate the cost? Like we know already, I think from Brett or one of the speakers mentioned that some of the tools are very expensive. But are there options for some cost-effective tools that might give us a broader lens of what's happening to make better decisions?
Great points. And I don't know if Brett, you have any thoughts on that? Because it sounds like you have put in some work looking at possible data tools, and whether you think it's a good use of your time or our time as a committee to look at those options.
So what I could suggest to the committee would be, let us get started with the Cycleberry infrastructure program. We have kind of the leading active transportation consultant in Canada on board. We'll work with them to see if they have any recommendations or any input, and I can report back in a memo to committee, likely towards Q3, Q4 of this year. And I think that would be the best path forward. So just rely on the experts with that team and see if they have any recommendations that we could look into, and I can communicate that back to the committee.
That would be fantastic. I think that's a great suggestion. Any thoughts on that path forward? Are we comfortable with that?
I think it's great. Thanks, Brett.
That's great. Awesome. Okay, so if there's nothing else on that data mobile app piece. Oh, Al.
I'm trying to be good about the mute button now after the dog came in. Just a quick question on this, because Brett mentioned when we were talking about all the data stuff. We just lost, I think as of last night or the night before, the Ann Street Bridge. So I'm curious if, Brett, if you could just tell us can you tell us offhand what AT infrastructure is planned to go into the replacement for that structure?
So the structure is allowing for buffered bicycle lanes. In the interim, it'll just be painted as a shoulder until we have connecting infrastructure on either end of the crossing. But that is what's going in as a replacement, in addition to wider sidewalks on both sides.
So buffered bicycle lanes there would be like, are they different grade level, different?
These are 2-meter bicycle lanes on road, same grade. And that's based on just where the decision was made relative to the latest practice within the cycling industry. But that's the recommendation on that corridor. Essa Road, we're looking at a multi-use path on the north side is the cycling infrastructure, we're looking at that crossing. And then Sunnydale Road, because it's a lower volume streets, so no recommendations would change there. Those will be on-road cycling lanes as well, but they'll be painted as shoulders until we can get the upstream and downstream pieces in place.
So sorry, just to clarify, what would change once we do have that connected infrastructure on the other side of the bridge? What
We would
change
just
the infrastructure?
physically paint in the cycling lanes. Right now, we're just constructing the platform wide enough to just basically in the interim, it'll just be wide paved shoulders. So you'll have your
So we're not
parapet.
going to have cycling infrastructure on the bridges.
We can't have
until-
cycling infrastructure without any connectivity. So the bridge is being built for it. We're building the bridge wider for it. But because we don't have anything on the other side of Edge Hill or of Wellington Street, it wouldn't make sense to just sign buffered bicycle lanes for that short section. But everything's going to be in place for when the city does go and widen the road. So everything's future proof. We're just not signing and painting the cycling symbols and the hash marks on that portion. It'll be larger urban shoulders on that section.
And so in the TMP, when do we anticipate that we'll see cycling infrastructure on the other side of the bridge?
That is further out. It's not presently in the capital plan right now. We have a corridor and established neighborhood with relatively young infrastructure on Ann Street itself. So I'd have to look and just see where that is, but it's likely not within the 10-year horizon right now.
Okay, so yeah. Wow, this is why we're never going to meet our targets. I'm not going to lie, I'm very frustrated by the way we don't prioritize this infrastructure in our community. And we're going to wait for a road widening, and people are shit out of luck in the meantime. It seems frustrating. Eric, I see your hand. Eric Jacoby Hawkins, I see your hand, and you're on mute.
Sorry, thought I'd unmuted. Yeah, someone who regularly uses the Ann Street overpass, having even just for that section buffered bike lanes would actually be quite beneficial, because when you're biking down a street, you've got sort of space to move out if you need to, if there's a traffic situation or vehicles coming or something. But on the bridges, you're really constrained. That's when you're bottlenecked in, and you've got a real feeling of being, trapped between traffic and a very nearby railing. So I can see the benefit of having buffered bike lanes, even just on the overpass, even if they don't connect to bike infrastructure on either side. Certainly a lot of bikes do take that route on both sides, regardless of not having bike lanes, infrastructure going down Ann Street. So I think it would be beneficial to include that from the get-go and not wait until there's connections on either end, because a bridge is a special case, and it has a very different feel for cyclists and pedestrians due to that one side constraint.
Okay, so in terms of this conversation, it's not the item on the agenda right now. So maybe we need to have a larger conversation about this piece later on. But yeah, I think we've expressed some concerns there, and maybe we should connect afterwards to see what we can do next. But yeah, no, I appreciate the committee members raising that, because it is an important piece. Are we okay to move on from this data item? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Crompton Park, Emery, if you just want to give us your quick overview of what's going on there.
Sure. So still pieces coming in from community. So I'll bring that subcommittee together on some of those pieces next. And then with the deferral of walking through that property area with residents and others with the lockdown, we'll kind of revisit that end of June and into July. So I'll bring it back as an item.
That's great. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Next item on the agenda is around school travel planning and active transportation education. We talked about how we can maybe do some additional work on this front. I don't know if John, you had some thoughts on how we can proceed with this?
Sure. Yeah. Am I allowed to share my screen? Is that working this? I forgot.
I think so, as long as you have permissions. Have you tried clicking the button below?
Try it. See if this works.
And if not, we can ask Brandy.
Got that? No. Oh, hang on a sec. Here we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
That now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So yeah, if everyone's okay with this, I've kind of gone through, I was kind of hoping to be a little bit further along than this, but I've put together sort of a presentation outline. This is kind of just my idea of what we might be doing for meeting with. So just, I guess, for some reference for everyone else is that I'm hoping to go to parent council at some schools to start off with and push for some active school travel. And so this is just a presentation I'm kind of hoping to put together to start it off with a couple pilot schools and then extend it from there. So yeah, this is, I'll just kind of quickly go through this presentation overline. So what my idea is, and then I'll get feedback from everyone at the end, but was to have a little bit of background about myself, discuss what the Active Transportation Committee and our mandate is, go over the objective for the presentation to them, go over the approach and materials, and then get some questions and answers from the parent group and I guess the teachers that are there. So for the first one, from my background, I think I'm trying to just give them an understanding of my perspective on things to let them know where I have experience and where I have zero experience, and I'm looking for help from them on input and support from them. So just a little bit of breakdown of transportation engineer. Obviously, I look at things from a transportation demand management perspective and my experience with having a family and active transportation or active travel to workplaces. The next part is kind of discussing about the AT&S committee. So I kind of want to make sure that everyone's clear on who we are, what we do, our mandate, that we're advisory committee to the council, to city council, our mandate, what we're trying to achieve through our committee, and then our committee members so they can understand what experience we have and what we can draw on from our committee. And then, sorry, a sec here. Sorry, and then I've got so the objectives, I don't want to spend a lot of time kind of going over in the presentation to them, like preaching about the benefits of the active transportation for children, but I do think it's important to kind of hit on some major benefits without going into the stats too much. We can go through the fact that we're trying to encourage transportation and sustainability, and that we're hoping that the children, it'd be effective if we have the children driving that behavior at a young age so they can continue on with it, to knowing that fewer children are walking and wheeling to school, and then more using that inactive modes of transportation, and sort of just giving them an idea that in the long term, what we're trying to achieve here is like a long-term goal of what we're looking for is to encourage the habits at a young age, and they'll likely be able to continue those habits, continue on. The children and the students will continue on with those healthy habits of walking and active transportation. And specifically, I guess in the short term, what I'm hoping for is that the kids will be a strong incentive for the parents to change their habits. So anyone who's been a kid or a parent realizes that the repetitive asking of the same thing over and over again from a child is an effective way of changing behavior. So if we can get the kids to be pushing the parents to be walking to school or biking to school rather than driving, I think that's a good push for what we're trying to achieve in our group. So and the other part of that would be obviously if we can get kids and parents and families walking to school, then I think they're more likely to in the future take a different trip walking rather than jumping in the car to do it. So I think if we can get that experience in, that you realize that, well, even though it's raining, it's not that big of a deal, or even though it's cold, we've got the clothing to do that. So hopefully they can get the bikes and scooters and everything out to the front of their garage or a shed or the front of their porch where they're ready to make that trip for future ones. So I think, yeah, in making the case, there's the great thing about what we've got available to us is this Ontario Active School Travel that's got, will provide that link, and it, you know, it can go through all the cases of healthier children, less traffic and pollution, safer school zones, and better academic performance. And there's great resources in that link that we can provide to the parent groups and the teachers to show, you know, if anyone needs to be convinced that this is, you know, an important thing that we should be pushing, all the information, all the stats are in there. So, and the next part is the approach and the materials that we've got. So we've kind of done the setup now, but why and when, why we're doing it, and why and what we want to do. And this slide, they've got this information and these materials that allow them to have everything kind of sitting ready, waiting for them. So we're trying to encourage the active transportation, and they've got this school travel teacher's kit that's got the link here. It provides lesson plans. So this is, see if I can pull this over, you guys can see this. This is the toolkit from City of Toronto. Can you see that? Yeah, great. So this is the toolkit this is the kind of the big push is like, this is the toolkit that's available to these teachers. So they've got this toolkit and it goes through everything from, you know, the introduction explaining how in the City of Toronto, you know, why active school zones, the cost of traffic congestion, and then it goes into the resources for the classroom. So that's the great part that this provides. So they've got kind of ready to go lesson units and ideas to create their own plans. And then further on than that, they've got samples for inspiration on if they want to do, you know, if they want to be tweeting stuff or they want to do PA announcements, they want to do school letters or promotional events. It kind of provides all that stuff for them set out there, you know, broken right down to say, you know, here's how it is, here's how you do everything. So it's a great resource to have. And this is the kind of point that I want to get to them is that, you know, so what we're trying to do is provide it to a teacher, say, you know, if you are in there, you've got curriculum that you need to be hitting in each specific area. You're looking for science and technology in grade 1. It's got the resources there for you. As you continue on, it's even more, it kind of breaks it down even further to say, here are the lessons plans. If you want to talk about language or mathematics or science technology, here's how the lesson works and here's how the goal and description of how it works. And then even beyond that, it breaks it down, you know, for every grade, and it's got links through here. And beyond that, it even breaks it down. Let's see if I can pull one more thing over here. For each one, they pull into like individual lesson plans. So it's like, you know, this one's for grade 7 and 8 technology and transportation. It tells you how long it is, how it's going to start, what you're benefiting. It's got the materials here for you, introduction, like it breaks it everything right down to them. So this is kind of like, you know, if you want to do this for grade 7 and 8, here's how you can implement this, and continue on with all the appendix and all the reference information that you need. So, so this is really the point that we're trying to get to them to say, you know, you've got this, here's the resource that you've got available to you here. So I can get this back on again. Here we go. So we can provide that to them. And I think that really what we're trying to tell them is, you know, what we're trying to do is recognize, encourage and recognize through this process. We're hoping the school will encourage and recognize and track active transportation trips. So we want them to possibly take on something like this. And I guess my hope is that no matter what it is at each school, it can be either by a classroom, if the whole school wants to take it on, whatever it is, we are ready to recognize either individuals, classes, or full schools. If they let us know what they want to do, we can provide something, you know, not to be condescending, but it's pretty easy to encourage a child with a pretty small prize. So, you know, I think we can, if they're interested in jumping on this, I think we can provide a lot of stuff. We kind of talked about free bus passes, VIP access to city events. And there's, you know, if we get it bigger, it can be walk and wheel prizes with radio recognition and corporate donations or prizes and stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. What we're looking for them is to, if they can implement some lesson plan like this, say we're going to start tracking, we're going to track our classes, how we're doing now, how we're going to improve. Let us know how you want to do that. And then we can say, great, here's how we can recognize your school, your individual, however you want to do it. So that's my ideas. And if we can get them on board with that, then we can see how we can roll it into future other classes or other schools or whoever wants to take it on. So, and I guess, yeah, that obviously at the very end, hopefully they can help us with, you know, what's the barrier, you know, here's what I think it's going to be easy. Obviously, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, But let me know what's does this work? Is this really actually a big pain for you to do? The principals not really want to do that because they're concerned about they're going to be highlighting problems in their schools, whatever it is. Hopefully we can get information at the very least back from them saying, here's why I'm not interested in doing any of that work because, for whatever reason. So that's that was my idea on how to run this. I'm happy to, I guess what I'm hoping for is let me know if we're in support of this. I'm happy to kind of give it a shot and see how it turns out. And we'll see what that, and certainly, like I'm open to taking criticism on how I've approached this or not. Don't feel shy about letting me know what you think. So.
Thanks so much for that, John. That's really, really exciting. Thank you for doing all that work. Just quickly before we get into it, I just wanted to apologize for kind of losing my temper there a bit about the Ann Street overpass. And Brett, I'm sorry, that wasn't directed at you. It was frustration at our transportation system as a city and the momentum that it seems to have in the wrong direction. So. Thank you we always appreciate you being here and we appreciate the work that you do to advance AT in the city. So just want to apologize for that. Okay, I see a couple hands. Anne-Marie, I saw Kelly. Feel free to raise your hand if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thanks for putting that together, John. That's brilliant. Love the incorporation and the Toronto example as well that you showed, I think ties so nicely into where, even Brett as a staff member and as a committee, we've talked about Vision Zero and where we want to go. So it ties in nicely around our intention too and how that's expressed to our school boards. Wondering if school board trustees are also a stakeholder, I'm not sure, but I keep thinking a bit about them around how they can advocate for some of these pieces if it's appropriate too. Happy to support you and whatever next steps go forward. And as you're sharing that, when we talk about engagement, it can go in so many wonderful places, and we've got these great forums too, where school boards can be a target, but we can also engage families regardless of where schools go as well. So how do we complement the work that you've done and put together on this? I think about, sitting on a Simcoe County meeting, and it was Paramedic Week, and they showcased a video of a youth in the community that talked a bit about the emergency response and safety tips. And I just envision the conversation that can spin from this around youth showing how they're getting ready to bike, wheel or walk to school. And I love that framing, wheel or walk, right? So what about the helmet? What did you get ready? And what are your safety checks? What did you enjoy about the route? And what did you notice about your environment that was new? So I think this is just the beginning of maybe really, really great engagement. And wherever it can go and whenever it starts formally, if this is something that would move kind of in a fall school engagement or not, but how do we support momentum for this? So kind of like the back to school and have the pop-ups around, what is the bike infrastructure, and do we have schools that would be early adopters of this? So I keep thinking a bit about, do we have schools that have infrastructure to support, kids leaving their bikes for the day or a number of bikes, and where are we hoping they look at their own infrastructure supports? So I'm on board. I'll help in any way to move this forward, and happy to make sure that there's recognition around even kids in my ward as an example. So, putting on a sticker or handing out bike lights or anything like that around a random day where you're spotted kind of wheeling or walking, and just those lucky moments of recognition that might work.
Great. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, it's hard. I've I've got a lot of sort of visions on where this could go, optimistically thinking where things it could go. But I think we're probably gonna have to see how it rolls. Like if we do a couple of pilot schools, see what the uptake is, and then really like at the end there where we ask the questions, be like, how tough is this for you to implement? Is there any appetite at all? My hope is that everyone is concerned about those school entrances and everyone wants to get their kids more active on school. Most people walk to school as kids, but so my hope is that we can push from that end. And if you can push parent council has a pretty strong voice and it's pretty effective in moving policies, I think. So yeah, I hope it works, and I'm happy to kind of, I don't have one specific defined vision where it's going to go, but I think it's going in the right direction, hopefully. And as far as
one follow-up. Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't sure about the timing. I'm not sure what. Yeah. So because of the COVID stuff, I mean, I can try to, if it works, maybe we can hit a school before the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, certainly we want to get it going in the start of next year, whether or not you can get out there in September and have some sort of, I don't know, October, some Walktober or something like that, some sort of event throughout October, and be ready by that time. But yeah, we'll have to see how things go with the pandemic.
And a
Marie,
quick
you had a
follow-up,
point?
and I'm not sure if we can answer it today, but there was that safety project, I think, and the audit that was happening around a pilot of a number of schools in Barrie with the health unit around the kiss and rides. And I think just, I'm wondering if any of those schools might be ones to start with, or a revisiting of some of those individuals. Maybe it's revisiting Sherry, though she might not be available. She might identify if there's schools that were early adopters in that pilot. I think it was a pilot across Simcoe County, but I believe there are 4 schools in Barrie that were participating in that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stems from at that time. I recall being, if you've got a keen principal or vice principal, then that's the way they kind of got in there. And vice principals tend to move. So I don't know if it's the same location, but yeah, I have a lot of friends who are teachers, but I have a few friends who are the school board. But if anyone's got any other resources, friends or colleagues or anyone else that they know that can say, oh yeah, I've got a principal or a group that I think would be a great thing there. And I don't think specifically that we have to hit schools that have great infrastructure necessarily. Perhaps hitting schools that don't even have great infrastructure might be equally as effective or more important than hitting the ones that already have a great parent council and infrastructure area. But certainly welcome. Yeah, if anyone has suggestions or contacts on who to talk to to get into a good parent council group, let me know.
Great. Anything else, Anne-Marie?
No, and I'll apologize. I've got to exit, but I'm glad I didn't miss that presentation. That's great, John, and count me in to help however the next steps are identified.
That's great. Thank you. I did see Justin pop up onto the screen and raise his hand. So I don't know if you had something to add on what we've been speaking about. Welcome, Justin.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. My name is Justin Mcdonald. I am the Senior Transportation Technologist of the City of Barrie. I also am part of the working group for the health units, active school, safety travel. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an overview of that and kind of just see how that ties into kind of John's proposal and just some frameworks and how those might work together in terms of like approaching schools and school boards, because there are requirements to approach the school board to get questions approved prior to actually going to school. So there is some formal process that needs to kind of be done that probably will have to be kind of vetted out, but just kind of wanted to highlight those policies. So there are 4 schools that are actively participating in the active school travel. They are Oakley Park, which is located in the northeast section of the city, Trillium Woods, which is located on Veterans and Umbrook, Willow Landing, which is located on Big Bay Point towards Loon Leggett area, and then Cundles Heights, which again is kind of in the northeast section of the city. So as part of those, the staff and health unit have done walkabouts with the schools. For the 3 schools, unfortunately, Cundles Heights, we haven't had a chance to do walkabout because of the pandemic and schools kind of opening and closing, that we haven't really had a chance to do walkabouts for that. But as part of those walkabouts and through the school engagements, the health unit has actually kind of done what's called the hands up survey in the schools, and they've got a lot of those kind of building information, like how many siblings are in your schools, what's your mode of transportation, barriers that you may have, how did you get to school today, how did you get home from school today. So they do have some metrics with regards to that Sherry should have, that we could look to get to kind of build off of. And then just some of the stuff that we've identified kind of in those 4 schools in particular were like, can we reduce the speed limits, community safety zone, missing signage, pavement marking enhancements, things of that nature. So some kind of more city implemented measures to kind of improve that. So that's kind of the crux of the health unit. And then as part of that, there was also the policy review, which I believe, John, you actually completed, which was the review of City of Barrie and Simcoe County policies for school and safe travels. And I don't know if that's been formalized yet and submitted for the health unit for review, John. And that's the only component of that ATS committee that I'm not up to speed on.
Right. So yeah, we did do that. Yeah, our company did that. So and my wife, who's a policy analyst, she did a lot of the work on that because it ends up being kind of more policy stuff than, well, translation between those two. So but yes, it has been finished. It was kind of finished at an opportune time where everything kind of was up in the air for other things. We're all finished, and then everyone got distracted by, understandably, the pandemic. So we can always come back and do. We had talked about at one time doing a presentation to this committee about what we found, or what the findings were of that policy scan. And yep, certainly available to do that. Yep.
So just on terms of like conducting surveys at schools, you kind of do have to, as I mentioned, you basically have to determine your framework of questions and provide that to the school board to get vetted through their committees and get it all approved. And then it goes to the principals to see if it is engaged, if they're interested in being engaged. So there's a very formal process for doing that. And I would recommend that we kind of build off the framework of the health units that's kind of already had those questions already kind of approved, that kind of build on that. And I'm not sure just what kind of the framework is for this kind of proposal, John. Is that like you are spearheading it going to all the schools, or are you looking to kind of piggyback off of the ATS funding that will terminate in, I guess, the end of this school year in 30 days, because they're extended to the end of this 2021 season.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, and maybe I should have been more clear on. So my vision of this, and certainly welcome to the committee's perspective on it too, but my vision was that this was more of an education promotional thing than a data collection tool. So it would be encouraging them to do stuff. So any of the data that was collected through this, my plan wasn't that we would collect this data and make use of the data, more that it would be, some kids have walked back, one classroom has walked back and forth to Toronto and back combined, or the school has walked, wherever it is. More not to collect data, more to encourage interest in active transportation, and to find a fun way to track it, but not a scientific way to track it and award it. And that's why I was kind of thinking of going, if we go to the parent council, if we go as a informally, to make a presentation to a parent council saying, would you like to do this? But yeah, certainly my idea wasn't to have this be a formal and to have them suggest improvements necessarily around there. I think it would be great if through the classroom stuff, if they were talking about it and saying, hey, I noticed now because we've talked about it in class, grade 7 student says, I see how important, certain things are in the community that we're doing. And I can see now that I've been kind of made aware of that, I can see how those things play into whether or not I want to walk to school and that sort of thing. So open to the committee's perspective on this, but my idea was that it would be informal promotion education part, as opposed to data collection and identifying specific improvements that need to be done.
Thanks for that explanation. Kelly, I think you were up next.
John, thank you. That's really great. I love all the approaches. It's great to get the kids engaged. And I'm all about education and engagement when it comes to increasing active transportation. And I think it's a very important thing and needs to align. Is that Justin? Is he our full-time active transportation coordinator? No? Justin? Brett?
That's you must have seen my Christmas list. Justin's our full-time development review technologist, and we try and squeeze this in when we can.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thanks. I was like, yay. We'll get your Christmas list. I'm sure, Brett. I'm working on it. I really am.
He does an excellent job.
Sounds like he does. That's great. So there's a program, and I know Sherry's not here, and I know Justin was talking about a program too, but the one I was familiar with was called, through the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, called On the Move, which was another active transportation. Justin, I see you popping up there. I don't know if is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's I don't think that committee's met since, at least I haven't seen the minutes from August 2020. So I'm not sure. And I'm sure Sherry, John would have lots of info on that too. And, when trying to not reinvent the wheel and be more collaborative. And again, I'm not sure if these two are, as you say, completely separate things. We've got data collection, we've got, On the Move. We have 4 schools that are completely engaged right now. So maybe there's like a, you know, an umbrella that says, okay, this is the education piece that the Active Transportation Committee is taking on. I'm not, I really love the idea. I just don't want to duplicate things. Or is there a way we can, you know, work together and work better together with other groups that are already facilitating this? And I understand Justin's point too about going through the boards to get approval, and I understand what you're saying about going directly to parent councils. Part of the win, I guess, would be getting it tied specifically to a curriculum item. And that often gets a bigger win for teachers to tie it into their curriculum that says, yes, I've covered this piece on the curriculum. So I love the idea. And I'm just not sure how it kind of all blends together with the existing pieces that are out there.
I see Brett and Justin. So we'll go to Brett first and then Justin.
So, and Justin, feel free to correct me if I'm misspeak. It might be worthwhile to reconnect with the health unit as well as the school board, perhaps through an invitation to this committee to talk about objectives and to tease out John's desire for an educational plan to really understand where we'd like to go and what any specific asks might be. So that would be a suggestion to the committee.
Yeah, I would agree, and just kind of build off of that. We've kind of had two very active schools, Willow Landing being one and Oakley Park being a second. So Oakley Park is still engaged. Their parent committee actually meets online, and they are actively reviewing. So it may be worthwhile if the committee, I'm not sure how this formal process works, but decides to go that direction, almost have a guest speaker come on as part of that, not necessarily through, because they have their formal groups. Like Willow Landing is part of their climate change and green sustainability committee. I forget the exact title, but they have an actual committee that's formed of staff, parents, and students. So that could be like, that's how that gets engaged, because we sit on that committee as part of that, the active school travel. So it would almost be like a guest speaker for the educational component, just as a suggestion. It just kind of builds off what's already kind of that groundwork that's already been set. So
on that, would it be possible for Justin, you to share with the committee at some point the contact for those committees with those schools, so that we have that?
Certainly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll get the principal's contacts, or I believe one's principal, one's a vice principal, but I will get those contacts off to, I guess it would be yourself.
That would be great. Yeah, I can make sure the members get it. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Suggestions on how we move this forward based on what we've discussed today? You see Al and then Eric.
Yeah, just a quick thought from our earlier, the Active Transportation Working Group's experience with school travel planning pilot projects. Sometimes the key people could be a key parent or whatever. The difficulty with schools is that they are places of transition. Teachers change, principals change, and the kids are always moving through because it's an elementary school, but from kindergarten to grade 8, every 10 years, you get a complete turnover. So you're doing the education process constantly and forever and repetitively. The anchor things in people in elementary schools often turn out to be the school secretary. So if you can find one of those, and I think we had one at, might have been at Hillcrest or Emma King, I forget which, John might remember, but a key person who's going to be there for the longer haul is just fantastic. And so that was just offering that to John and to Justin on the score, where you're looking to get that engagement. Continuity is so important, because otherwise within a year or two, everything that you may have accomplished in that school in terms of awareness and education and stuff, it's gone because the kids have moved on. And it's the same thing with the whole environmental education stuff as well.
Thanks for that, Al. Eric?
That's a very good point, Al. well, sorry, I should back up. Thank you, John, for putting that together. That's excellent initiative that you've taken. And I don't know how, but if there's any way I can support, let me know, reach out and I'll help out. I think it's good because it's also an activist sort of, it's a way of getting out there and just getting it done. There's obviously hurdles and we want to Kelly's point, mesh it in with existing initiatives possibly to coordinate things. But certainly that falls in with our committee mandate. So if I can support it anyway, I agree. To Al's point, for continuity ties in, I think, to what Kelly said earlier. Kelly, getting it on the curriculum is how you maintain continuity. I have no idea how to do that, but it's a hell of a good idea. And again, if I can support in any way in making that happen, let me know, because that is the key, I think. Then there is continuity then.
Great points, Eric. Yeah, I don't know how you do that, but that would be a big win. I wonder if there's any advocacy work ongoing on that to advocate for more active transportation pieces in the curriculum. I'm sure it's not the first time it's come up, so maybe we can do some work looking to see if any of that's already happening. Any other comments or questions on this? Thoughts, or John, any thoughts on next steps, asks of us in terms of the support that you need?
Yeah, so I think great input here, and I guess some of that stuff is what. So my thought was that if the first one you did would probably pull out a lot of the issues, or I'm hoping would identify a lot of the concerns where exactly the teacher says, you know what, I can do that for this year, but I can add that into my lesson plan. It's a bit of a pain for me to do, and if it's not in my curriculum, I got other things to do. So yeah, I think because I was thinking of it more as a pilot type thing where we give it a shot and see what happens. If it goes nowhere, then it goes nowhere. But the thing that I liked, or the part that I liked about it, was that we trying to avoid all I totally understand Justin and Brett's stuff about saying, got to go through the processes and stuff. And that's kind of where I was, to be completely honest, looking at going in the back door and just saying, planting a seed in some parents and planting a seed in a couple of locations and saying, is this going to work? Is there any interest in this? Or are they kind of like, it's too much of a bother for me to do. So, so that was the idea. So, yeah, next steps. Great question. So my idea was that I would try to see if I could find a parent group where I could do it, but I guess I'm not sure how that works. So I was doing it more, I guess we do it from the committee. If we're going to put City Barrie stuff on it, as part of this committee, then it's a bit different than someone doing it as an individual. I think Justin asked about funding and stuff. My idea was that I was just going to be doing this as a volunteer. So I don't know how much stuff that saves the city from being part of it too. Good question though. I don't know if I can just reach out to some parent groups and see if we can give it a shot if everyone wants to give it one shot with this, or yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm happy to hear what everyone else thinks. I'm certainly willing to reach out to the contacts I have to see if a parent group will sit with me and listen to this, or if they say, no, it's got to be a different process. I don't know if that causes problems legally as a committee member or what it is. And yeah, so happy to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I think, part of our mandate is that education and awareness piece. So I think we're able to do stuff like that, even if it's just individual committee members taking on that work. I don't think we need to worry about it too much. I'd be happy to help reach out to schools, parent groups, and try to get it in. And I see Justin has his hand up. I don't know if you had a thought on that particular piece.
No, sorry. It was just a bit of back. So I know just on John's presentation, he mentioned a lot of Toronto school travel stuff. And as Kelly alluded to, there is the Simcoe Counties on the Move. So I can forward you their website, which has a lot of kind of similar information that may be better to kind of piggyback off the Simcoe Counties kind of approach to it. It just kind of makes it close to home. So just I'll forward that off to you just as just more as a talking point than anything.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. So John, did you want a committee member or two to like actually support you with going to these meetings and speaking to these groups? Like how did you envision that happening?
Great question. Okay, so I guess I'm happy to give it a shot if everyone's on board with it. I'm happy to go if we can. I'll keep everyone informed, saying, okay, I think we found a parent group. Here's one I'd like to go to, and then report back and be like, see how that first one goes. I feel like that might be the first thing. I think
Okay.
If we can get it where we've got a presentation that someone else, that where other group members can go to parent councils or other things, then that's great. Then we can I don't need it to be just me doing this stuff, but just trying to say I'm happy to do the first one and see if I get laughed at the building, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I like that approach. And then we can almost have like a template that we as committee members could, go to the schools in our neighborhood if we felt like and connect with them. Eric, did you have a thought on that? Your hand.
Just a comment to John's point. If I can help out in any way, I'd be willing to present as well for a pilot or for subsequent if you prove it first. You won't get laughed out, and hopefully you get in the building in the first place. That's, I think, going to be the challenging part. Not that it's impossible, but yeah, making the right contacts with parent groups is great, and I'm willing to help on that in presentation in the future.
Yeah, and I see no problem with you using the weight of this committee to lend you some legitimacy when you're approaching those groups. I think that can help out. This is an official committee of council, and yeah, don't be afraid to play that card. Eric?
Just for clarification, is this directed specifically to elementary schools or high schools as well?
Question.
So I guess when I'm thinking about it, my vision was elementary schools, and I guess I was thinking about going to the public board first. I think we had the most success with them in the other stuff, but I can do, I think we can expand it to the high school, or I'm happy to do it to high school. I think it's probably a bit of a different set of lesson plans to do it through the high school, but yeah,
Right.
My thought was first through elementary school, and probably through the younger ages in the elementary school first. Was just my vision to kind of get it if we were trying to start it from the young age to move up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just wanted for clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're pretty clear on next steps. I realize we are 5 minutes away from the end of our meeting time. Something I do want to discuss with the committee is that we don't normally meet July and August. We have in the past, and we can if there's a desire to have a meeting in the summer or two. So I don't know what people think. We have a lot of work to do, so I'm open to meeting in July, but I don't know what everyone else thinks. I see Kelly nodding, Eric's nodding. Wolf's maybe. You don't have to show up. It's fine. Tyler is gone anyway. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's aim to have a July meeting, and we can do some work on that then. Okay. Anything else in this particular piece that you need from us, John, or are we good to move forward?
No, I think I'll update the group. I guess probably through an email with where if everyone sends me if they've got a contact or if they think they've got a parent council group that's going to work, let me know, and we'll see how it goes.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the update on the Firebird Community Cycle grant application. Firebird has actually decided not to move forward with the grant application. They're focusing more on their core mandate right now, which is to repair and sell secondhand bikes. So that they advised us of that recently. But I'm sure they'll be interested in the future in working with us as a committee, and maybe we can think about how we can kind of formalize that engagement with them going forward. Are there any thoughts on that piece before we move on to the next item? Okay, Bus Stop Pollinator Gardens. I know this was more of an exploratory discussion piece that Anne-Marie had suggested. And maybe we can defer this to our next meeting for a quick discussion around that, if that's okay with everyone. Seeing some nods. Yeah. Kelly, I was just trying to figure out what's the status of the City of Guelph's landscape visit program conversation. The person was out of their office for a while.
Yes, and she's actually speaking to the Bugs group on Friday. So I think Kevin, you're going to that, right, on Friday? Kevin Bradley, I think he'll be there. So
hi, everyone. Yeah, hi, Kelly. Yeah, if I can't, then Stephanie Weidman will be attending for sure on Friday, because there's 2 items on this agenda that are actually going to be discussed on the Bugs agenda as well on Friday.
Okay, so we can look forward to an update.
Maybe at our next meeting we can give an update. And just it was a program that the City of Guelph incorporates and comes to your backyard and gives you advice and on gardening and pollinators, and it's a free program. So we wanted an update from that. So it's going to the Barrie Urban Gardeners group first, and then back to active transportation. Yeah.
Okay, Al.
Kelly, I'm sorry, your voice kept cutting in and out on my mic or whatever. I couldn't. So I lost most of what you were just telling us about. This is going to which?
Okay, so she will be speaking. This woman that is at the City of Guelph, who looks after a program that is a gardening program that comes into your home for free and offers advice on pollinators and healthy landscapes. So it's a healthy landscapes program. She's actually going to be speaking to our Barrie Urban Gardeners group on Friday. She wasn't able to come to our meeting today, and I'm going to try and get a update for our next active transportation meeting. Is that okay, Al?
Yeah, is the Barrie Urban Gardeners a distinct organization from Barrie's Garden Club?
Yes, it is. Yes, it was created last year out of the pandemic, food security. So we have it's a Facebook group, and we have over almost 2,000 members now.
Thank you.
Okay, so those last 3 items on the agenda will roll over to our next meeting. We'll probably have a conversation too around the school travel planning and AT education piece. I think it would be wise for us to maybe have a conversation about infrastructure, going over the 400 overpasses, and maybe we can come up with some ideas on how to approach that. So those are some agenda ideas for the next meeting. If you have any other items that you'd like to see at the next meeting, feel free to reach out to myself and Brandy, and we can make that happen. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns from committee members before we adjourn? Not seeing any. Just want to thank all of you for your work on this, and to all the staff on the call as well. We really, really, really appreciate your time. We're so thankful that you're here at these meetings listening in, even when there aren't we don't get to the items that may concern you, so we appreciate it. Al, I see your hand.
Kevin, or excuse me, Keenan, can you, I don't know, because I got on a couple of minutes late. Did you were you able to give the committee members an update on the Bradford bypass thing from last night?
I didn't, so I can give a quick update. So council did ratify a motion, a modified version of the motion that we passed at this committee, calling on the provincial government to conduct an assessment of the water quality impacts on Lake Simcoe due to the Bradford bypass project, and looking at alternative routes to lessen the impact. So there were some parts removed from our motion, unfortunately, around the federal environmental impact assessment that we were requesting, and looking at the climate change impacts as well. That was removed as well. I think there were some sentiments from certain members of council and the mayor that Barrie shouldn't be getting too far into the business of other municipalities. But obviously, you know, greenhouse gas emissions don't respect municipal boundaries, but I think we're still making a pretty strong statement on it. Bradford asked us to endorse the project, and we've actually asked that more work to be it should be done to study it and study the impacts, and that they should look at alternatives. So I think that's a positive thing for the city of Barrie to do. So that was because of this committee. So thank you for bringing that forward. Did you want to add anything on that, Al?
Only that I think it's unfortunate, and I think it's a reflection of the council members have to do with far too much information in detail, and I don't know how you ever manage to keep track of it. But at least 2 members of council last night made the comment about, but the federal government's already approved this thing. Well, the federal government never approved it, and I think somebody did try, and I think the mayor tried to correct that. That it's because it's not within their jurisdiction directly, but there are facts that apply to that thing. It's a constitutional difficulty in Canada. What else is new? But the idea that that's not the problem. They just said, well, we're not going to jump in on top of this because we expect, I believe the minister's response was, we expect the province will do, well, I guess you could say, will do the right thing. Although the province has been fairly clear that they don't want to do anything except start building bridges. So I just commend this committee, city building, and particularly Anne-Marie and Keenan for taking this to council, for being strong enough on it to give it the leadership it required. And I think the city of Barrie is better for having stood up and said, this is important to us. And it's not a local issue. It's Lake Simcoe. It's our whole region. And we need to look at that because it's part of, it's part of the climate change context as well. So just kudos to Keenan, to you and Anne-Marie for, for your digging in on this thing, and for even managing to get that in about alternative routes, as both the presentations on it last night asked for. There were 3 great presentations on this one made, and it made a difference. So thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Al. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate all of you so much, and stay safe, and we will talk soon. Feel free to reach out if you have anything to raise.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tyler. Take care. Good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, Tyler.
Good luck, Tyler.